Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's PHCA webinar titled Development of an A-plus Inspection. I'm Wendy Johnson with the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association. Before we begin, I have a couple of housekeeping items to cover. PHCA offers monthly webinars to members to receive updates from department staff on regulations, learn from industry experts on current trends and practices, and to gain a better understanding of practical application tools to equip you so that you may continue to provide the highest level of quality care possible. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the PHCA website later today. The webinar has been approved for 1 continuing education credit for PHCA members. Credits will be uploaded to NAB within the next 2 weeks for those who have provided us with your unique NAB number. I'll be sending a link to a quick survey later today. Your feedback is important to us and our speaker, so please take a moment to complete the survey. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. However, throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit your questions using the questions pane on the right hand of your screen, and our presenter will address them throughout the presentation. We don't have to wait until the end of the presentation. If you have questions, we'll take those throughout the presentation. Now for today's webinar. Today's webinar is being presented by Sherry Hill, CEO of PEPP Unlimited. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her. She's been speaking with us at our conferences, and she's been attending our conferences for many years, and I'm sure many of you know Sherry personally, and she will be presenting at our convention, and we'll have her talk about that at the end of the webinar today. Are you afraid of the inspectors knocking on your door? This session will address your fear by providing suggestions and tools provided for a deficiency-free inspection. Increase your knowledge of deficiencies to proactively address potential citations. Mobilize your staff for inspection readiness through training and motivation. I'll now turn the webinar over to Sherry.
Good morning to everybody. And today we're going to go back to your old school days when you had all those tests and you had to study and you had to figure out what you really needed. So let's get started this morning with me asking you a few questions. Just what is an inspection? Why do we need them? What's the total purpose for them? Obviously, the one thing is inspections are a necessity. They're also a requirement by DHS. Ultimately, they are a culmination of daily diligence and labor. Now, why do we dread them so much? First of all, we're always afraid we're going to fail. It is also our reputation on the line, because sometimes families will even ask us, so what was your inspection like? And of course, we have to keep them posted, and so families can actually look at them and see them themselves. And of course, most of our bosses expect a perfect inspection. Good luck. So what is a proper perspective of inspections? Today, we're going to focus on the purpose of inspections. So now, let's look. Do we really need to change our attitude? When you think about report cards, most of us think of A, B, C, Ds. Remember those days? So let's start with an A to build into our report card, with the A standing for attitude. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. And I personally know, and I think all of you know, that the whole issue of having a positive attitude all the time is very challenging with what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. The next one comments about any fact facing us is not as important as our attitude towards it, for that determines our success or failure. And what is an inspection for? We all are concerned that we may fail. So think about a fact may defeat you before you ever do anything about it. You are overcome by the fact because you think you are. So right away, I am recommending and suggesting that you think about inspections as being a positive experience, not a negative one. And this is my advice to you, not only for the time that we are working together this morning, but for every single day. A healthy attitude is contagious, but don't wait to catch it. Be a carrier. You are the one that makes the difference. So starting out with an A for attitude, number one, you need to set the example. Believe it or not, and I think all of you would believe it, you know that your attitude makes a difference. Makes a difference with your staff, makes a difference with your residents, and ultimately in the end, it makes a difference with families as well. If you are totally anxious about an inspection, that whole anxiety will feed your staff's anxiety and nervousness. If you have confidence that you have worked towards doing the right things every day of the year, then ultimately in the end, that will inspire and encourage all of your staff. The third point talks about rallying the troops. To be honest with you, instill confidence in your staff. Remind them that they are important. Remind them that what they do every day is what makes a real big difference in their job. Encourage them to inspire someone, such as a coworker, to do things right. And teamwork, you already know about, is the key to your success. We often say a well-oiled machine to work at optimum efficiency throughout the year, but especially on inspection day. Be positive with the anticipation of an inspection instead of being overly anxious. Moving on to a B, you want to always be prepared. The first bullet talks about being organized and getting your ducks in a row. Now, some of you may have seen it, and if you have not, you need to create what is called an inspection notebook. And if you haven't seen it, as we go through in a couple of your handouts today, talks about how to create an inspection notebook. You want to also be ready, not just you yourself, but all of your department heads, all of your employees. Let them know what to expect, which we will be covering in this presentation as well. You want to have everything at your fingertips, because if you don't, what happens is the inspectors really become a little anxious And then they start asking for things while you're out running around looking for stuff. And then all of you, inspectors and administrators and staff, become very nervous. You want to be a delegator so that everybody understands what's happening. And I know that delegation is one of the most challenging areas for all administrators. So you want to groom, mentor, coach your key staff until they are knowledgeable and confident in their delegated staff. All right, here's some of the preparation side of the fence. Now, with your presentation today, you're going to see some suggestions for checklists. To be in compliance, you want to check your regulations. And inside of our regulations is different requests and different things that we need to have ready. Do it ahead of time. Don't wait for an inspector to ask you for it. And when I say posting checklists, what that is inside of the regulations. They tell us what has to be posted. The second one has to do with policies. Make sure you have all your policies. Put them in a policy and procedure notebook so that when an inspector asks you about the policy, it's at your fingertips. You're not digging through a file drawer. You're not thinking it's on somebody's desk or in somebody's office. Have it ready for an inspection at all times. Your annual renewals checklist. I know one of the things that I struggled with when I was a newer administrator was things like having the elevator inspected. Was it every year? Was it every 2 years? What is the frequency? I had to do that. Those are the kind of things you need to be in tune to. So have your own checklist, reminder sheet. Go through the regulations and know what has to be done every year. And then delegate it to your department head that's responsible for it. I think most of us always remember about medivals have to be done annually. Now, I know they have to be done at other times as well. But the whole annual, do you have some kind of system in place to make sure all of them are done on time? Because it's one of the areas that inspectors are definitely going to be looking for. And then the whole issue concerning training. I recommend that you create your own training binder. And I think a lot of administrators have done this at this point. What I recommend is that you have a training binder for whatever your training year is, whether it's an annual calendar year or whether it's a fiscal year of some kind, it doesn't matter. But have your training binder in place. Have it ready for those inspectors. Have it updated. Don't let it be last year's training binder when it is due this year. And then there are handouts in your program today that you have access to list all of those checklists. Then, of course, the C stands for compliance. This is what all of us try to do every day of the year. If we can maintain compliance and what we have to do, then it just makes our inspection so much easier. So on this particular slide, you will see the inspector binder, and this is taken right out of your RCG, so that you know the order that is used here. But you can create your own order inside of an inspection binder if you wish to do that. But these are the categories that inspectors are looking for. So have your material ready in the inspection binder. The one thing I want to remind you is to keep it updated as well. So if you are going to change anything throughout the year, or you're going to create a different procedure for something, make sure you update your inspection binder so that it will be ready. At any time those inspectors walk through the door. What I always say is, who is the best inspector for your building? It's you. So create your own inspections, and we are giving those by DHS inside of the RCG. So use it as if you are the real inspector, because in the end, you truly are. Inside of the RCG is a copy of the self-inspection worksheet. And I recommend that you do it yourself. Now, this is not something you're going to be able to do in 1 or 2 days. This is something that will take you a while, and do it and redo it and double check it so that when your real inspectors come in, you're already ready for them because you've already done their job ahead of it. Okay, let's take a look at D. D is for documents. Do you have all the documents ready? I already know that we get sick and tired of all the documentation. And I also know that our staff complain to us because we demand so much documentation. However, when those inspectors walk in, guess what they're going to demand as well? They are looking for very good documentation. So if you take a look at the RCG on page 250, they have a list for resident records. What needs to be documented in the records? Do you have everything? Do you have the resident's birthday? Do you have the last time that they went to the doctor? Do you have when the next doctor's appointment's coming up? Those are all issues that inspectors will be looking for. One of the things that inspectors do for your resident records, they typically are looking for 10% of your resident records. And it really doesn't matter what size your home is. For those of you, if anyone's on board today, that are in a small home of 6 to 8 residents, it's possible that they're going to look at all of them. But usually they choose approximately 10%, and you will see that on page 248 of the RCG. Under your employee records, it is also listed in your RCG on page 250. They normally, they meaning the inspectors, will normally choose 5% of your direct care staff records. Now, the whole issue of direct care, I know all of us sometimes get mixed up with who might be considered ancillary versus direct care. So if in your facility you pretty much train everyone to be direct care, be prepared because your ancillary staff files may also be pulled. The other thing that I want to tell you about ancillary staff records is that if you ever have a complaint in regards to what a dietary staff might do, excuse me, or if they're complaining about housekeeping, whatever that they may be complaining about, if that goes into DHS, they may very well be pulling out your ancillary staff's employee records as well. So always be prepared with all the information that is required. And it is, as I've already stated, on page 250. Then you want to take a look at specific documents. And again, this is all listed on one of the handouts that has been given for this presentation. You will notice some examples. We are required to have a month of menus. So make sure you hang on to them. Don't just toss them at the end of the week or whatever the frequency is that you use in your own building. You have to have a month's worth of menus. That will also include any changes. So make sure that whomever is responsible for changes in your menus, they are maintained. First of all, they're marked on the menus, and then they are maintained for a minimum of a month. As you can see on your screen, you will also see the quality management plan. They will want your staff training. Make sure you have staff always sign off when they are being trained. While I'm talking about training, another recommendation I make is that in your training plan, you may do other kinds of training in addition to what you lay out in your training plan. You can always add that to your training plan. So, for example, if you ended up needing, this just happened in a facility that I was working with. A resident went out to the hospital and came back with a colostomy. And there was a whole question mark about could the person come back with a colostomy into a personal care home. If the staff is trained, or if you have other medical staff on board that can manage colostomies, then yes, they can be in personal care. Consequently, in this particular facility's situation, they brought somebody in to teach colostomy care. So I recommended to that facility that they add the colostomy training to the training plan and their training notebook. And so it's always an extra special thing with inspectors if they see that you do specific training for whatever might happen in your building that was not on the initial standard training plan. Don't forget those test vaccinations, because often someone will bring a pet to visit, and if they visit one time a year, you'll probably be okay. But if they're coming to visit on a weekly basis, come to visit on a monthly basis, you want to make sure that those vaccinations are in place before the inspectors show up and the pet comes back to visit grandma. And when that pet comes in, they're going to ask you, do you have the documentation for that particular pet? So these are the kind of specific documents and policies that you need to have in place, and definitely make sure they're kept up to date. And I think I already mentioned this, you have handouts concerning those kind of documentation. D can also stand for daily preparedness. My question to you today, do you have an auditing tool for each one of your departments? Even those of you in small facilities, you will have different areas, different departments that you need to check on. So who does the auditing? Do you wait for the inspectors to come in? And trust me, we all know they're going to audit everything. So if we can be ahead of them with our own auditing tools, then we will be ready. We will be prepared for that inspection. I recommend that you also maintain a tickler file system of some kind. The electronic side of the fence with all of our computers, they make those file systems very easy. So when you have the requirement of the MediMount, do you have a tickler system set up for them? I know some of the systems already have that built in. But if you don't have one of the commercial systems, you would need to create your own. Then, who does a monthly inspection? Anybody in your building? One of the things that I recommend is for those of you that have a larger building and you have different departments, have different department heads do an inspection of a different department. So you might have your dietary staff or dietary manager do a nursing department inspection. I know that's pretty scary, but it's a great way to do it. Have your housekeeping supervisor do some administrative inspection. And ultimately, in the end, you as the administrator should be doing a monthly building inspection. Don't just depend upon the department head to do their own. The next arrow will say mentor. So my question is, who are the mentors in your building? I would hope that you, as the administrator, is a mentor to all of your staff. And are you developing people who will be knowledgeable, responsible, and confident? And when you do that, your inspections are going to be a lot easier. Your inspections will they will already be covered by those people that you have developed. Ultimately, in the end, if you develop these kind of employees, then the whole auditing side of the fence is much easier. We all know who is accountable in the end. It's the administrator. So the old phrase, the buck stops here, yes, in getting ready for inspection. The buck stops with the administrator. So you want to build empowerment and ownership to those confident, responsible employees that you already have. And ultimately, in doing that, you want to always remember to motivate and reward those employees. And you have a couple of auditing sheets in what you have in regards to this particular program today. Then, also under the D is DHS. And we all need to not be afraid of DHS. Allow them to become your go-to source. And I know how scary that can be sometimes. But in the reality, they are our bosses and ultimately our inspectors. So I recommend that you assign somebody to check the DHS website on a regular basis. Who in your staff is capable of managing that? And yes, it can be time consuming from time to time, but someone really needs to do that. Most of us as administrators don't literally have the time to do it ourselves. So assign someone to do it consistently. Another way to keep up with important things and also the changes in the department is to sign up on the DHS's website and join the listserv list. If you are not on that particular list now, I highly recommend that you do it today, because that is where you will get notices from DHS quicker. Now, you can always contact them for information, but it will automatically come to you if you're on the listserv list. The next bullet talks about making time with keeping up with what's happening in the industry. I highly recommend that you allow some time to do that. For example, the conferences and workshops that are provided by our state organizations. And obviously, PHCA is the one that has sponsored today. It is critically important that you join the state organization. They will help you keep in touch with what's happening on a regular basis. I want to be cautious how I make this statement, but I am going to make the statement that the end result of ignorance in our industry is what's going to lead to deficiencies on your report from an inspection. So stay on top of it by doing what I have listed on this particular slide. Moving on to E, I don't know how many of you ever got an E on your report card, but I do know that from time to time with younger children, they kind of put that E in there. So I decided to join them. And I joined it by adding the expectations of inspection day. If you really want to know 100% what's going to happen on inspection day, look at page 248 in our RCG. And it's literally laid out what they're going to do. They're going to review the records, which I've already referred to. They're going to document. They're going to look at your documents and your policies. And unfortunately, we sometimes get a little nervous or not conscientious enough to monitor those policies. Because if you're in an older, established facility, those policies may have been written 10 or 15 years ago. Have they changed? Have you updated them? And are the ones for the inspectors updated? The inspectors will tour the interior and exterior of the physical building. I'm totally in tune to them walking around outside, because I remember when they didn't ever do that. Well, now they're walking around outside. They're going to look for any wind damage, any rain damage, or any other kind of damage that may be to your parking lot, may be on a sidewalk, chips on steps, no handrails on steps. So there's all kinds of things that they are looking for outside of the building. They're also watching the interaction with your staff members and residents. Then, of course, they are going to interact with your residents. They're going to ask questions such as, do you like it here? How's the food here? Do you have things to do? Do you participate in the activities? And all they need to hear is someone to say, well, they always cancel those activities. You definitely don't want to let that happen. So the residents can be dynamic, or they can be a real challenge if they have major complaints. The other thing that the inspectors have begun to do a lot more in the last few years is interviewing your staff members. So I always recommend don't fake those training sessions, because that's all you need is for a staff member to say, oh, I don't know anything about that. And it's one of those topics that is in your regulations that you have to train on an annual basis. Now, when they arrive at your front door, you want to make sure that you understand they're going to walk in with an entrance conference guide. Now, that is the page that they read for all your statistics. How many residents do you have currently in the building? How many of them have dementia? Do any of them have mental health? How many people do you have on hospice? And what I recommend you do is, if you don't have a copy of it, ask your inspectors for a copy of it and keep it up to date throughout the year. That is very, very helpful to you along those lines. All right, and then when you are doing the exit conference with them, they will invite the local county ombudsman. Sometimes the ombudsman can come and sometimes they don't. But be aware that they are automatically invited for all exit conferences. The one recommendation that I make to you is to include your top people. In my past experiences when I had my own buildings, I always had my department heads attend the exit conference. Now, if you're in a smaller building and do not have department heads, then who are your responsible, dedicated employees that really will help you follow through with anything that they may recommend or anything that they may have found that was wrong? And once again, they will help you, or when they report that, your staff members can help you. The inspectors will always review Appendix F, and I've already made reference to that personal care home self-inspection worksheet. It is on pages 254 to 259 in your RCG. And if you have done that throughout the year and stayed on top of it, then I'm assuming they're not going to find very many things on theirs. So I highly recommend that you do it throughout the year, do it more than once, and then ultimately when the real inspectors come in from DHS, you will already have it taken care of. And then, of course, it's in the exit conference that they are going to discuss any kind of potential citations that they're going to give you. Now, obviously, I had to put F in here. Now, I don't expect any of you to ever fail an inspection because I don't want you to look at it that you are failing. The bottom line is the chances of you getting some kind of a citation is probably 98 to 99%. So don't look at it being a failure. If you've done your homework throughout the year, if you have done some of the suggestions that I have given in this presentation today, there's no way you will ever fail an inspection. The one thing that I want to let you know is you always have a right to question and discuss those citations. Make sure you do that before you start to write out a plan of correction. Now, I have a couple of tidbits right here today, but that is the title of the presentation that I'm going to give at the conference of PHCA this fall, How to Write a Good Plan of Correction. I'm going to pause and just question you at this point as in regards to how many times have you submitted a plan of correction and it came back asking more information? Or something that they also do from time to time in different parts of the state is they will write on your plan of correction what they want or the way it should have been written. So be aware that your plan of correction can make or break return to your building by the inspectors. So if you take a look here on the slide today, you will see that you need to develop a strong plan to address the deficiencies by using the steps provided in the RCG, pages 211 to 213. Now, a brand new bulletin has been issued by DHS, and it came out on July the 15th. If you did not get it, you definitely want to get it because there are some real strict changes. They're not big changes, they're not difficult, but they are going to be effective October the 1st. So once again, here's another example about why you want to be on that listserv list so that you personally get information. because that's where this bulletin came across, was on the listserv list. And it's going to be effective October 1st of this year. And the third thing on today's presentation is you want to make sure you have really good evidence of how you're going to correct whatever the problems are going to be and whatever has been found. So make sure if you need to take pictures, if it has to do with some kind of documentation, you have it, and then you submit it to DHS, your regional at DHS. What the inspectors are looking for is what are you going to do long term. You may fix it today, but if they come in 3 months from now, is it going to still be broken or will it be fixed permanently? And that's what they're looking for. So when you look at what you can learn from an inspector and an inspection, is you need to learn to accept criticism. It's very difficult for some people to be able to accept criticism and turn it into a positive. Secondly, you need to figure out what went wrong. What happened? Why did one department not do what they're supposed to be doing? And most of us know that an example is the RAP has not been filled out correctly for care purposes. Is there a problem in, first of all, then you have to ask yourself, why did that happen? Is it because the staff is not trained? Is it because someone got too lazy and didn't do what they were supposed to do? Another example is dates in dietary. Are they not on your food? Was something put into the refrigerator and not covered? Why? That's what I mean when I have posted determine what went wrong. Thirdly is revise over and over again. If you need to change a policy or procedure, change it. Don't just talk about it. Listen to what the recommendations are. And if they work for you, then revise and then ultimately train your staff. The fourth bullet talks about making time for continual assessments of your facility. I know how easy it is to get so tied up in day-to-day operations and day-to-day issues that we are dealing with that sometimes we don't assess what's really happening. We're just dealing with those problems. We're just rolling in today, rolling out tonight, rolling in tomorrow, and not really assessing what's happening. So stay on top of the assessment of your own facility. And the last thing talks about beating deadlines. Because when it comes to your inspection, you never know when they're going to walk through that door. So consequently, stay ahead of your deadline and be ready for them on any day of the year. And to all of you, I wish you an A+ inspection, because you really can't fail if you follow the guidelines in this presentation. Benjamin Franklin taught us all that if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. That was great information that you shared today. Really appreciate that. There aren't any questions at this time, but if anyone has questions, please type in your question, and Sherry would be happy to answer those questions for us. And in the meantime, I will be sending an email before the end of the business day today with Sherry's presentation, as well as a tips and tools a handout that has a lot of good information in there. I'll also include Sherry's contact information, so if you do have any questions that you think of later or need to get in touch with her for any reason, her contact information will be made available on the email as well. And as Sherry said, she will be presenting on how to write a good plan of correction at the PHCA convention on Tuesday, September 24th, and it's bright and early, so make sure that you are registered and getting there early. It's 8:15 to 9:15, so that'll wake everybody up, I'm sure, to get there, and you won't want to miss it. So if you haven't already registered for the convention, there's still plenty of time. Things are still coming together in some cases. Most of the programs are together. There's maybe one or two that we're still working on. So be sure to get registered and get your hotel. More importantly, if you need hotel reservations, please get those made, because a lot of times we do fill the hotel and sell out prior to September. All right, Sherry, this is a quiet group. There are no questions coming in at this point. You must have done an excellent A+ job of presenting the information. Give it another minute or two. And again, don't forget to complete the survey that I'll mail out later today in the follow-up email to today's webinar. And watch for other webinars that we'll be hosting. We have several scheduled through the beginning of September, and we're working on more for the end of the year, October, November, and December, and even in discussion on some sessions that we're looking at for early 2020. All right, I don't see any questions, so I think we're going to wrap this up. Sherry, again, thank you very much for presenting on this topic, and just want to wish everybody a great remainder to your day.